I'm Ryan Grove. This is my wife, Tiffany Grove. Happy New Year. It's New Year's Eve. We've been having a conversation sometimes about the flat Earth, but I mean, generally, that's what we're trying to shoot for: the flat Earth versus the globe Earth. And
He is.
we are, and I have reasons to believe that the Earth might be a plane, and she, of course, believes that the Earth is a sphere, like most other people in the world. So, anyway, I just want to address one point. Somebody actually commented on last night's installment in the said that the Bible shouldn't be read in the way that I was implying it should be read. So I just wanted to clear something up real quick. And the reason I want to clear something up about the Bible is because, when we have this conversation, we do take into consideration science, but equally as valuable, at least to me, is also taking the Bible into consideration and trying to reconcile the two, because I think that they are both two different avenues of achieving a closer understanding of truth. So anyway, having said all that, I think that the Bible should sometimes be interpreted metaphorically, and at other times it should be interpreted literally. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. So I'm going to let my wife... Oh, it's our wedding anniversary. Happy anniversary. Oh,
Thank you.
man,
Happy
that's
anniversary.
cute. All right, so let's begin.
So I'm just curious as to how you distinguish when you take it metaphorically. I can't even agree with your limited paradigm of metaphorically or what, physically or
Well,
literally.
for example, when Jesus spoke to the people, quite often, more often than not, he spoke in parables.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't necessarily have to take the parables literally, because they're parables.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other times where Jesus says straight out things like, I'm the truth, I'm the light, I'm the way. And in order, to enter the kingdom of heaven, one must be reborn again and be reborn spiritually. And I think that those aren't metaphors, that those are literal, direct, straightforward statements. So I thought it was obvious to everyone, but apparently not, that parts of it are metaphorical and parts of it are... And I guess a lot of the tricks that have created... tricks by people trying to put forth their interpretation of the Bible has probably created all the factions of Christianity that there are, the thousands of them. But anyway, I just wanted to say that I disagree with the comment that the Bible shouldn't be read that way. I think sometimes it should be read that way. And no, it's not a textbook. And obviously, I think everyone knows that it shouldn't be read like a science book or a textbook or something. I'm sorry, I said text, but I meant science book. Okay.
Well, I think that's all the comment said, was that it shouldn't be read like a science.
Right, and I think that's obvious. I don't think anybody classifies it in their library as a science book. However, that does not mean that it does not comment on the nature of physical reality, at least in some way.
So,
yes.
I know you feel that Genesis is a literal text, that we should take it literally in regard to how the world was created and founded.
Like the first 7 days of creation, yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
So,
even though there's two different versions.
when we get to Adam and Eve in the garden, and they're instructed, don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yes.
So what's your take on that? Was there a snake that had legs?
Yeah.
And he just was a wise creature of the field?
Well, all right, you're making it complicated, but I'm going to go there.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point of ourselves, or our physical bodies, are to be possessed by the Holy Spirit, according to fundamental Christianity, yes?
Mm-hmm.
That it's not us, but it's God. It's His Spirit in us, possessing us, that makes us behave and do good things and act like Christ would and be good Christians. Mm. So, from the very beginning, if you believe in Christ at all, and the Bible, the Judeo-Christian Bible, then you must believe in possession at least to some degree, right? So, of course. And so, what was your question? I'm gonna keep going with this, but I'm starting to get out there.
What's your literal interpretation of Adam and Eve in the garden with the serpent, who was the most cunning of the beasts of the field?
If angels, as we understand them, vaguely, are spirits, and spirits inhabit bodies, and there aren't other human bodies in the situation that you're referring to with just Adam and Eve, because it was just those two. That if you think about those things, I don't think that it's impossible to think that the angel Lucifer, being a spirit being, entered a serpent's body.
So you think it was Satan?
I think it probably was, yeah, for sure. For sure. You might find this tedious, but I just have to bring up the allegory of the cube. I have to, right? So, I think that this really puts into perspective, or puts into light, the reason why so many people in this age of technology and instant information and access to all kinds of different views and perspectives, and it's just a sea of information, that we still can't unify. We still have all these divisions in society, in religion, in politics, etc., just like we did 100 years ago and 200 years ago. And that's just a strange outcome to me. So, all right. I'm sorry. I'm losing it again. I'm forgetting my train of thought. How did I begin this? Because I want to go through
your interpretation of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and Satan as a serpent.
Oh man, I don't know. This is embarrassing. I totally lost my train of thought. Yeah, we went to there, and I was talking about bodies being filled with spirits, and then I went off on some tangent. Darn it! I do that too much.
Okay, that's fine, but
man, I had a point to that. All right, but maybe you can fill in this space while I try to regain my.
Well, there's just a lot bigger picture to be had.
Okay.
Ezekiel.
Okay.
He talks about what happened in the Garden of Eden, and he talks about how Satan was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Satan was also a covering cherub, which covered God's righteousness, which means that he protected his righteousness through his works as a holy, good, created creature of God. And then he fell. And so that's what, to me, Genesis is talking about, is just kind of that universal struggle between good and evil.
Yeah, it sure is. Since you're there, I think it's funny that the snake, which already crawls on its belly, when it was getting dished out punishments after it seduced Eve into eating the fruit, that it's one of its punishments was that it had to crawl on its belly, and that's what it already did. Isn't that interesting? But anyway, I actually regained my train of thought, and I was just going to illustrate the allegory of the cube. Right?
Oh, that's right.
So this allegory is, you have a cube in a space, and you've got 4 observers at all the positions,
the cardinal points.
The cardinal points, yes, north, south, east, and west. And they're all looking at the cube. And the cube is 3 sides black and 3 sides white. And it's arranged in such a way that everybody can see 3 sides, because you can't see more than 3 sides on a cube at one time. And so the first person, when asked what is the color of the cube, looks at it and he sees 3 white squares. And so he says, well, the cube's white, because I'm looking at it. There it is. It's white. the guy to his left, when asked, well, what color, is the cube? And he says, well, it's one white square and I mean it's a
one black square
or
two white squares.
Yeah, either way, that it's black and white. And then the person on the opposite side of the initial person, when he's asked, or she, what's the color of the cube? They look at it and say, oh, well, it's black, because I see three black. I mean, it's black. All the sides I see of it is black. So, and then you get to
there's three black sides? I thought you said three white sides.
There's three of each. And so you get to the other person, the last one, they look at it and they see black and white also, but they see it in inverse proportion. They might see two white and one black, while the person opposite of them would see two black and one white, something like that. So then let's say you said, well, you asked them all at the same time, what's the color, of the cube, and you let them have a debate about it. They would debate forever without ever coming to a conclusion, because each person sees exactly what they see, right? They're seeing it, and by all accounts, every single one of them are actually right, even though they might contradict one another. So how could there ever come some sort of
communication
conclusion? Well, yes, but communication, not just talking. See, what would have to happen is that every man would have to rotate one space, in one direction, rotate another, and look at the cube the whole time, and then rotate to another, look at the cube, and then go back to their own space. And only then would they all finally realize that they were all looking at the same truth, just from different perspectives. And if you just stick to and defend the one perspective that you have,
you'll always
and you use that to block out everyone else's perspective, you'll never get to the true nature of the color of the cube, or you'll never see truth fully. It's not until you have taken the time to look at everyone else's perspective do you kind of get a sense of the whole thing. And as we have this terribly volatile conversation, this conversation about this very volatile topic, I think that allegory needs to really constantly be taken into consideration. All right, so I believe the Earth is flat. You got anything else offhand?
No.
To talk about that? No?
No.
Well, okay, with the flat Earth, this Antarctica thing, it's a big deal. Some people say that if the easiest test to prove whether it's a globe or a plane would be to just measure distances between latitudes. Because if it's a globe, when you start from the North Pole and you start measuring latitudes, it should increase as you get to, the distances should increase as you get to the equator. But then as you pass into the southern globe, the distances should inversely and equally decrease. Yet, or if it's a big fat flat plane with the North Pole being the center, and then you measure the latitudes, what you would find, or you would expect to find, is that the circumferences would keep getting bigger at each latitude, and as you went south of the equator, they would just keep getting bigger and bigger until you hit the the alleged ice wall, which is the remote, vast barrier that seals us all in. So, do you have any information whatsoever about either finding or that measurement or test at all? Because I've been exposed. Of course, it's been in the Zetetic astrology book. It was written 100 years ago, but a genius is a genius. We don't dismiss Aristotle because he lived 2,000 years ago as a backward moron or somebody primitive, even though by our technological standards their society was vastly primitive. So in that way of seeing the value of great men throughout history, that's why I read the Zetetic astrology, and that's why I'm bringing it up now as a point.
I
That the
personally
experiments
don't
that
believe
he
in
outlined
great
say
men.
that the latitudes just keep getting vastly separated and vastly separated. So, and there's been a couple other sources, but I can't remember them. But you can look them up, and it's super easy. I've already given you like the keywords you need to find that information. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I won't interrupt. I just wanted to finish. Go.
I don't believe in great men, I said.
She's short and potent are her sentences. It's very terse, very powerful. So that's something to think about. That what I described, and you've used examples also of the flat Earth of like people like the guy that went up into space and skydived out of it, whatever. It's clearly the image that we see has clearly been filmed with a fisheye lens. The way that his capsule is bent. And what's funny is that the curvature that fisheye lens presents, if you superimpose that exact same curvature of the Earth, and you go to scale, and the only Earth photos like from space that we have, like from the moon landings, whatever, in order to get that curve scale, the Earth would have to be like half, something like halfway to the moon, in order for you to fit that, superimpose that same curvature. And then they have unfisheye lensed, the image with certain memes and in certain videos, and when the capsule straightens out, the horizon is just as flat as can be. That's pretty interesting, don't you think so?
No, I just think you're playing games in a certain altitude that doesn't really differentiate whether it's
because
under
this
flat.
isn't a
And I don't
debate,
care.
and I'm not trying to prove nothing.
I don't care.
I'm just bringing up stuff that I've been exposed to on YouTube, and if
Yeah, I
somebody
know you
really
believe
cares or has an opinion either way about it, they can easily just look it up on YouTube and make
then
their
they
own
can type in debunk
decision.
this or that specific thing,
for
and
sure.
you can easily debunk it. So
This is a really celebratory anniversary dialogue that we're having tonight. Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
well, I don't have anything else to say about the flat Earth.
Cheers.
It doesn't mean anything to me.
Well, that puts us kind of in an unfortunate position because these are the flat Earth dialogues.
I know. I think I've just
Maybe we
come
should
to
change
the
our
end
name.
of it. Yeah, I've come
And
to
that would
the end of my.
That would free us to
flat
ramble
Earth
on
discourse.
infinitely about infinite topics.
I don't
which
need
might
to
be
be
kind of
freed, but
interesting,
apparently
actually.
you do. So.
Excuse me?
I said I don't need to be freed, but apparently you do.
Well, I would like to point out that I don't think that from your perspective or my perspective that we have even come close to exhausting all of the topics
Well, I've tried to
involved
just
with flat Earth and
boringly explain to you how the science works, and you say, "Oh, well, we'll have to look into that." But
well,
you
reality
never do.
is about science and,
So I don't
understanding
care.
the mechanics of physical reality,
It's
but it's
like
also
people said,
philosophy,
you
and
don't
it's
care.
it's also many things. And
Yeah.
if you really want to get
You
close to
don't
the
care.
truth, like I said with the cube thing before, you have to take in all these perspectives. And if you do, you're gonna kind of wiggle your way to a clearer position of what's true than what your culture would like you to achieve. But all right, well, you know what? Happy New Year
New Year.
and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
And maybe
Happy
we'll change our
anniversary.
name to something else that will free us to talk about more stuff. But I think that there's a whole bunch of flat Earth that still needs to be like at least tossed out for examination by everybody.
We'll have to have a monologue for you. You may. I approve.
Bonsoir.